Welcome back to another exciting episode of #Fempire. I'm your host, Julia Pinella, and today we have an exceptional guest who's making waves in the world of real estate and investing. Joining us is Amelia Dandan, a dedicated and dynamic real estate agent with almost 5 years of experience at Century 21 Leading Edge Realty Inc. Amelia holds a Bachelor of Business Administration from the prestigious Schulich School of Business, where she specialized in finance and entrepreneurship. Her expertise lies in pre-construction and residential real estate, making her go-to professional for buyers, sellers, and renters alike. But that's not all. When she's not closing deals and finding dream homes, Amelia loves to travel, salsa dance, and explore the beauty of nature. So whether you're a seasoned investor or a first-time homebuyer, you'll want to stay tuned for some invaluable insights and tips from Amelia. Let's dive right in. Welcome back, everybody. And I have a very exciting guest today. Amelia Dandan here is to talk to us about unlocking wealth and the importance of financial literacy and just talking about money in general. So welcome, Amelia.
Thank you so much for having me on. This is my first ever podcast that I've spoken on. So I'm super excited for today's session and looking forward to chatting about tons of different topics and about financial literacy and just different things in the economy.
Yeah, no, it's great. And I think with your wealth of experience, like both working in the financial sector and in the real estate sector, I really wanted to bring you on just to share that knowledge with folks, because I think there's a lot of, misinformation that we're seeing online, which we're going to get into, but also just like understanding the importance of it, because I think there's a lot of disconnect, especially because these aren't things we learn in school. We don't learn about mortgages. We don't learn about investing. That's where you get a bit more into those niches in university and college. And now you have those degrees, but you're also working the front lines of this. So I think maybe if we wanted to dive in, it's been a big week for housing with federal announcements. We had 30-year amortizations come out for first-time home buyers on new builds. They're going to be exploring combating mortgage fraud. Increases to withdrawals from your RSP to help with down payments. What is that like with your clients, Amelia, that you're hearing about this? Is this good news? Did they want to see more from the government? What are your thoughts?
Well, I think all of these programs are really good tools to help people get into the housing market. So take advantage of all of the tools that are available. Max out your RRSPs, max out your first home savings account, max out your TFSAs, really let your savings and then the market start accumulating your wealth so that if you have a goal of home ownership one day, to really take advantage of the tools that the government's putting out available for Canadians. And it's nice because some of these limits, they've doubled them, the room of contribution that people can put in, because I think the government is really recognizing how expensive housing has become, and they're trying to keep up with tools that we have in place can actually be useful for people. So if you look at all the different resources you have available, there's longer periods for repaying the home buyer's plan if you take the money out of your RRSP. So they're really trying to help with these programs where they can to allow younger people and just Canadians in general get into the housing market.
Yeah, absolutely. And I think those are well said. I mean, working in the housing space as well, I think this is a good first start. I don't think this is going to solve all our housing crises and issues, but I think it is a bit, like you said, all these tools, the FHSA, delaying the repayment, I think they're good first steps. And I guess segue into a bit of one of my first questions with you, or following up question to that is, what are your thoughts on the real estate market? Buying a home with current rates on Toronto, you're licensed here in Ontario, some of the most expensive prices and cities we've seen, not only in our country, but as a G7 country across the world. What advice do you have to people who do I buy now? Do I sit and wait? Because I think there's a lot of uncertainty. We obviously don't have a crystal ball and can't predict when rates are going to come down, but you're working in the sector. What are your thoughts on it?
So I think there's been a little bit of a stigma put around home ownership in social media and just in general. It is costly and it is difficult to qualify, but long term, I think the Canadian real estate market is still a great place to be in. And there's a reason why so many people have been coming to Canada. So we have a very multicultural city. We have a lot of the downtown core in Toronto is so vibrant, and different cores and hubs are being built all across the GTA and Mississauga and in Burlington, different areas all around. And I think, and I'm not saying you have to get into buying like $1 million home, but as a young person and being a first-time home buyer, if you're going to be paying the high rents that are out right now and they've been high for a while, if you actually calculate how much you're paying in rent every month and you multiply that over 3-5 years, that's the down payment for a home. So you can, if you get your parents or if you have a family member that can help get you into the market, you can save. Maybe they can help you qualify or they can help you get the down payment for the property. Long term, it's a good way if you can manage to pay similar rent or mortgage, then it's much better off, in my opinion, to put your money towards a mortgage, which is something that's going to appreciate. You're going to be able to leverage that and then maybe move to something even bigger later on when you save a little bit more and you get some equity in your home. And a lot of the wealth of Canadians is actually linked to home ownership. So if you don't dip your toe into that bucket, as the years pass, you might be missing out on building a lot of wealth long term. So I encourage young people to, it might seem very unattainable if you're looking at the more expensive, million plus. But if you look at a condo, you look at something smaller to begin with, something that doesn't break the bank. Maybe you rent it out in the beginning, and then once you pay it down, once rates go down, then maybe you want to move into it later on. Look at different strategies just to get your foot in. And I think once you just take the first step, then it becomes a lot easier to build wealth. So they say once you start building and you start accumulating more, it becomes easier to accumulate more and more. And then some people think, okay, maybe I'll wait. But a lot of the time, our savings are outpaced by the amount that homes are going up in value, that houses are increasing. So if you keep waiting, you might keep getting priced out in the market. So it's good if you can manage to find a way to just insert yourself somewhere. And that's a great starting point. And then you can start building up wealth in the real estate space that way.
I think you hit a lot of really important points, especially as young people, that we feel there's this barrier, right? Quite literally there is a barrier. But I think what you pointed out specifically was you don't have to go for that $1 million home. Yes, you don't also want to live in the boonies, but finding that middle ground and that balance of what can I make work and how can I adjust my lifestyle to make these things work. And I know that's a theme we'll be exploring a bit more through the podcast of how can we set up financial goals and how can we plan for the future? Because I think the future is very daunting, but at the same time, we also live in a social media culture that's now. So with that being said, what do you think of, you mentioned your savings and your portfolio, your investing portfolio. What are your thoughts on investing maybe that money for that down payment into the stock market versus maybe a home? What would you say? I know this isn't an all silver bullet question or answer, but I think, myself, for example, I'm kind of torn between that. I'm living at home. I want to move out, but it seems unattainable, but I'm also doing very well in the stock market right now. So I guess what are your thoughts on investing?
So I would say that each person has their own risk tolerance. Each person has investments that work for them. So some people like to know that they have brick and mortar. That's the kind of traditional saying that they know they have a property somewhere. So they put their money and they say, okay, even if the value of my home goes down, I know that I still have a condo at Eglinton and Yonge or a condo downtown. So it gives them some peace of mind. But if you're comfortable going into the market and you have a little bit of higher risk tolerance and you're okay with, market fluctuations and you feel more comfortable in that space, then for sure, it's a great way to also accumulate wealth. They're very different. I think people, if you're worried about what to invest in, there's lots of financial advisors that you can ask to invest the money for you on your behalf. You can even just go into your branch and just ask them, book an appointment, say, hey, this is kind of my risk tolerance. And then they'll show you some portfolios or something that they think might be suitable for you. And then you can start building that way. Because if you have money at the end of the day, right now, if you just have a lot of money sitting in the bank and it's not earning any interest or return, the inflation rate is really high. And just in general, inflation will erode your money. Yeah. So if it's sitting there doing nothing, your money is actually being devalued. So it's really important to always think of what can you do. If you're, comfortable with GICs, something less risky than put it into something less risky, but at least it's getting some return. Or a great way to start is ask your friends. What are your friends investing in? How is their experience? There's a lot of people on social media that show a lot of ETFs that they're investing in, that you can open an account yourself and do some direct investing. Or even you can start by making an account. Use a very small amount that you're comfortable if it goes up or down. You don't have to go all into anything all at once. And just see, what does that experience look like? What happens in the market? You can check what it's valued at each day. So it's just to take away the idea that this is such a difficult thing and it's a very unattainable thing. If you change the mindset and you start learning more about it and learning what you're comfortable doing and testing, dip your toe a little bit, and you can start slowly accumulate more and more as you get more comfortable, then it's a great way to get into the market, because some people, young people, could have a very low risk tolerance, and that's okay. So it's just finding whatever investment is suitable for you in the stock market or in real estate. And I think it's good. They say a lot of the most successful people, they don't have all of their investments in one space. So you don't have to have everything in real estate. You don't have to have everything in the stock market. You can diversify. So you can use the stock market as a way to increase your savings enough that you're able to buy a home that you can live in instead of paying rent. And then once you have that home, then you can continue investing again and start to grow your savings again in the stock market. So you can use both at the same time for different things, but you have to reflect on your own goals. What are your goals? How do you see your future like? What are you comfortable with? And then you can decide, what kind of channel you want to go into.
Yeah, and I think you hit a lot of good points, because I think this is a space I have been slowly starting to educate myself in. And for, the listeners here, probably like, what the hell is a GIC? What's an ETF? And that leads me to ask you, like, why do you think financial literacy is important? Because I think there is this disconnect, like I was just saying earlier, we're not taught these things in school. So why is financial literacy important? And why do you think people maybe shy away from having these conversations, whether it is with their friends or their colleagues? Like, why do you think there's that, it's like, I think you said it, the stigma around talking about money? I know it's something we're always kind of told it's a taboo topic, don't bring it up at the table. But I think it hinders people's financial growth by not talking about these things, by not speaking with my friend about what they're making versus my skill sets in the market. So yeah, what do you think? A long roundabout of me saying again, why is financial literacy important, and why do you think we should be talking about it more as a society?
So I think the first thing is to look at the middle class. The way that you're able to move up into different classes in society is by investing. The idea of just working the same job your whole life, saving money, that kind of notion is not as successful and doesn't work as effectively anymore. So young people increasingly are switching jobs to try and get the most pay. But on top of that, you need to have something that's building your wealth that's not you working and you putting in the hours, because there's only so many hours that you work, but then you have to have that money growing as well. Because when you have that and you're investing long term, then that's what will be able to allow you to get to more financial freedom later on, to be able to retire earlier, to be able to experience the things you want to experience because you have that disposable income. And I think a lot of families, if your family was, maybe there's just a stigma in general, or maybe an immigrant family, your parents came from another country, and a lot of people would keep cash under their bed and they're scared of banks and they're scared of financial systems, and stock market is super risky and don't put your money, you're going to lose everything. Of course, not every investment is 100% safe, but I think there's misconceptions about investing that are really prominent. And I think a lot of us have to unlearn some of these misconceptions that have been placed in our minds, and then say, okay, yes, just because you invest your money, it doesn't mean that it's going to go down, but understanding how investment cycles work and that sometimes it will be up, sometimes it will be down. Is this a reliable investment that I'm putting my money into? Because there are things that you could lose all your money and go to zero for sure. But, if you educate yourself enough and you do more educated investments and you just do things long term, the value of time, we're younger, and with investing, just the compounding over time of you put $100 and your $100 increases a little bit. And then the next year, the return is on the 100 plus the return you got the year before. And then it compounds and compounds over 20, 30, 40, 50 years. That alone, just having the money growing itself, is a part of the return. So just being in the market is a part of the return, plus what you're contributing, and then the actual return of whatever you're invested in. So I think that if you open your mind and you say, okay, maybe everything that I was taught is not the best way that I can, use my money and plan for my future. And if you just make your mind more opening to just learning new things and questioning things and listening to podcasts, reading the news, trying different things, we can put ourselves into a better financial place than maybe where your family was. You'll be able to push yourself into a higher class later on, or just to amass more wealth, and that can lead to wealth that you can transfer to more generations after you as well. So it's like a rolling effect. If you become more financially literate and understanding how money works, then you can pass it on if you have a family and grow wealth that way. So I think it's rooted in a lot of experiences that people have had in the past, but we have the opportunity to change that future for ourselves and to change it for the future generations that are going to come after us as well.
Yeah, I really like that idea too of like breaking the cycle, because you did make a good point. Like my grandpa used to put money under his mattress because there was that skepticism of his background and with coming from a fascist country and all these pieces. And I think too, like you hit really good points there of long-term investing and managing that expectation that it's not going to grow overnight, because I think that's what frustrates me seeing investing tips on social media is if you're not making over 100K on your investments or day trading, these kind of, I think, scary things where investing gets that bad rap. But you put yourself in a very nice S&P 500 ETF and see, like you said, that grow. If you're putting in that $100, it's growing 10%. Now you have $110. And we're doing this now in our early age, but in 20, 30 years, that's going to be a good chunk of change that you didn't have to do. You just put your money in, hands off. And we need to save for the future because, yes, we're working now and we're taking our paycheck. We have our deductions on our CPP. But that's going to be drained. That fund will be drained by the time we are old. And I think it is important for people to utilize their RRSPs, their TFSAs. And again, if these terms are foreign, do your homework. YouTube, the school of YouTube is amazing. Or it comes down to also talking to, you mentioned it, a financial advisor, your family. I'll also give that PSA. You got to take everything with a grain of salt and make an informed decision on yourself. I would never trust a financial advisor and give them all my money to invest unless I understood the investments. What is a safe mutual fund? What are the expense fees with this? What is an ETF? For those listening, it's like a basket of stocks. But I think that's something really important. And I also want to acknowledge, I know you said this is your first podcast, but you're making a name for yourself on social media by educating the public and your friends about money and real estate. What has that journey been like for you? And why do you think that's important to also have that public platform?
It's just exactly why you're even starting this podcast as well. I just think it's so important that knowledge is wealth. The more knowledge you have, it's powerful. So just so that people know everything that's available. If you didn't know that you could take money from your RRSP to use towards your down payment, that might be putting you at a disadvantage because that's a tool that, you'll get your tax deduction, you can grow it without paying any tax on it. And then now because they extended the repayment period, these are little things that if everyone uses all the little tools that are available and they have access to, it can make it easier to build the wealth. So even just your TFSA, there's no reason that you should just invest without putting it into your TFSA, because your TFSA will let it grow tax-free. And then you can take it out later with whatever interest and return you got without paying any taxes. So, it will never hurt to be more informed. And it's good to know, because the more informed you are, then you can see more opportunities where you say, oh, okay, then this sounds like it could be suitable for me and make even more return on my money. You can kind of question, you can get information, like you're saying, from an advisor or from your friends, but then you use your thinking as well on what you've researched, and you can listen to what someone says, get someone else's opinion, Google it, go on TikTok, go on Instagram. There's tons of financial influencers now. And I just want to make all the knowledge and just take out that stigma with real estate, with investing, with money, and have it available to everyone so that we can help everyone succeed as much as they can, because that's really all you want. If you're an advisor, or I'm as a real estate agent, when you succeed, I succeed. So if you're able to save more, if you're able to get your first home and then upgrade to another home and another home, obviously, like, I'm getting paid my commission, but you're also building your wealth as well. So it ends up translating to everyone's benefit, that we're all more informed, we're all maxing out the resources that we have, we're all building wealth and doing the best based off of whatever situation that we're in. So that's why on my social media, I try to make videos about all these accounts that are available and different things that are happening in the market, and even some emails that I've got for some students. Like, maybe you think, oh, I'm in science, or I'm in another trade or another industry. I don't really know about business. Business doesn't really make sense to me. I want it to be a more open, easier conversation. I don't want you to shy away from it. People to think, oh, because I just study something else, I can't really know business. Of course you can. Of course you can know about the markets. Of course you can be up to date with what's going on. It doesn't matter what background you're in, what degree you got. You can be a specialist as well and be informed on those topics, and that will help elevate your life and the decisions and the way that you plan for the future.
Yeah, I think that makes me just really excited and happy to hear too. Knowledge is power, and it also helps make the economy go around, as like capitalist as that sounds. But I think people, when they hear wealth, they get intimidated. But I think what you're doing on your platform is great, and even just taking the time to be on my podcast today is breaking down those barriers of understanding. Even taking $50 from your paycheck and putting that into your, automatically, you can set this all up with your bank, automatically putting that into your TFSA, your FHSA, your RRSP, and putting that in an automatic investment, you will have that long-term growth. I think the challenge is people think you have to save, but you have to invest that money. Saving is the first step. And I think that is sometimes a challenge for our generation, because we have so many luxuries, like our phone costs something. We have temptations like going for Starbucks. And I think there's a challenge when it comes to maybe saving. Don't get me wrong, life is very expensive right now. Groceries are skyrocketed, there's price gouging going on. But we do live, I think, in a very different environment than our parents and our grandparents, where they didn't have to pay for their internet or the latest iPhone or their phone service. So it's a bit of a segue into me saying to you, or asking, what strategies or advice would you have to someone who's maybe trying to manage their debt and save? Because I think people feel overwhelmed. They don't know where to turn. We did mention a few, like talk to people. That's a huge piece. But what advice would you have for anyone who's looking to start out saving?
I know there was a video that was going around, and someone just calculated if you spend $30 a day, that will come out to around $10,000 at the end of the year. Don't quote me, but something like that with the math. And it's really important to not, when you want to start saving and you have plans for the future, it's important not to cut on things that you want to do as well, because like you said, we all need to keep living. There's a lot of costs that it costs a lot to live right now. So it doesn't mean that you're not allowed to go get your coffee, it doesn't mean that you're never allowed to go out again. This is what I would say if someone wants to budget. If you want to save, let's say, $10,000 by the end of the year, look at what you're spending money on and analyze what's important to you, what can be reduced, what can be switched to different things, and see what you'd have to do on a monthly basis to get to that goal. So if that means going out maybe less to restaurants and going out to parks or going on walks or trying different activities that don't cost as much with friends, or maybe you don't go shopping as often, or maybe you start thrifting, or you try different ways of saving money. But it's more, you have to start at the end. How much do you want to save, and work backwards and actually look at what you're spending on a month-to-month basis, because I think it's so easy with our credit cards, debit cards, tapping on our phone. You tap, money's disappearing. You don't even feel it leaving. You pay off your credit card and you can just go to the next month. So just being more conscious, budgeting, make an Excel, make a document and just say, okay, I want to spend this much per month on going out and I want to spend this much on this and budget it that way. And then maybe even tell somebody, hold yourself accountable and see, okay, this month I was 90% to my target, or this month I was 100% at my target. Because it's easier to work towards something when you have an end goal in mind. Like, let's say you wanted to own property one day and just thinking, okay, I'm going to save here because I'm working towards this goal. If you don't have anything that you're working towards, then you say, oh, okay, like, it doesn't really matter if I spend it because there's nothing really that you're saving for anyway. So you kind of become more lenient with yourself. But if you say, no, I want to own a condo and live in this area and it's going to cost me this much and I need to have this much saved, then it's going to become a lot easier for you to actually start planning backwards to save that amount of money. And then when you save that money, maybe go invest it as well, so that it's not just the saving, but you save it plus the money is going to grow, and then that combined, you'll be able to reach your goal.
Yeah, and you made a lot of good points to it. And the point that just visualized in my head when you said tap, 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 I'm thinking back when we were kids, when, credit cards weren't really a thing. Like, you couldn't tap with your watch. But your parents maybe gave you like $50 and that's all you were allowed to spend. And you had your day at the mall with the girls and you literally were forced to budget because you wouldn't have any other money otherwise. You want to buy your little shoe, you want to buy your little slushie and your lunch and like all these things. And yeah, it's really interesting when we come to this just completely virtual space where, like, debt. I think Equifax recently came out with a report where people are struggling to service their debt. And I would be interested to see how much of that is because they just don't know how much they're spending. And you said really basic things like have an Excel spreadsheet, divide up what are your necessities. And what I mean necessities as if you are paying rent, how much is your rent? What is your hydro and utilities? And breaking that up, how much debt do I have to pay off, whether it's a car loan I took out or a line of credit or your student debt, and just managing that. Because I know that's also helped empower me to understand where can I invest? Because I think it was just, you're going through life. I've got money. I'm just going to spend it. But I'm coming to a bit of an age. I sound like I'm super old. I'm not. I'm 27. But it just like you said, you have these end goals you want to do. I want to own a house one day. I want to have a family one day. And, making my salary now, that's not enough. And I need to have that money growing. And it's not going to grow sitting in a savings account where you get 0.001%. And I think it's really, really important. And I'm glad we're having these conversations. And especially as women, I think, and correct me if I'm wrong, I feel like it's a bit of a space unknown. And quite literally, I think it was last week, it's the 50-year anniversary of women being able to apply and own a credit card. So this is almost still a new space for women because it was always controlled by men. You always had to go through your father if you wanted to buy things. Land titles would, skip over you or go to your husband. I'm going on a bit of a tangent here, but what I'm trying to say is I'm glad we're having these conversations and also talking about the importance of saving and what tools can we use? Who can we be talking to? Because I think it's really, really important. And you've been bringing up great points. And I'm wondering as well, like, from your experience, what are some like other investing vehicles or outlets available to people? And how do you think someone could decide which one aligns best with their financial goals?
In the space where I work in investments, not the real estate side, but just financial investments in general, it's a mainly predominant male space. Most of my coworkers are male, so for sure, this is a space where even women in the corporate world, there's still that dominance of it being very male-dominated space. So women shouldn't shy away because we are, as capable, and you can learn whatever, the men are learning, you can learn it as well. I hope women are not intimidated to go into this space, because I'm an example of a woman in this space, and I think anyone can do it when you train and study and set yourself up for that success. And, just the cost of having a child, even, it can cost around $300,000 or $250,000 for a child from 0 to 18. So there's a lot of costs with it. You want to have a family and you want to go through these different stages of life. So it's really important to set yourself up financially in a way that you can go through these different stages of life in a more comfortable way if you invest in and have more money to do those things. And I challenge the listeners and the viewers to go online. There's a lot of different sites where you can just search up an investment growth calculator. And it can literally, you can put in an initial amount. You can say, I'm going to put in $1,000, and you say, I'm going to contribute $100 per month. And then you can play with the time horizon. You can put 10 years, 20 years, 30 years, and you can see how much that $100 per month and your initial investment of, let's say, $1,000 in 40 years, how much it will grow, and play around with the different return rates. So that, okay, you say first you thought, okay, I want to do something more conservative, but then you see the return and you play and you say, oh, if I do something with a little bit more risk, and obviously it's still calculated risk, 3% more, let's say 8% over 40 years is going to get me this much more money. And then, so you can say, okay, maybe I'm comfortable increasing a little bit more because this is the kind of impact that it's going to make. And there's even a lot of tests and things that you can do to say, testing your own, what's my risk tolerance? So find a website, they'll ask you questions. How would you feel if this happened? How would you feel if this happened with your money? And at the end of it, it will recommend what kind of investor you are. And then that way you can kind of learn more about how you feel and view money and what kind of options you should look for. And investing is an experience that you're constantly going through and learning. So a lot of people, because in the past couple of years, we've had a very turbulent kind of market. So people thought that they were very risk tolerant. But then when they saw the huge dips in the market, even though they understood that there are dips, it really made you feel uncomfortable, or it really pushed your comfortability with the investment. So just think of it as a dynamic, ongoing thing. It doesn't have to be you don't have to be in the exact same investment all the time. People in different stages of their life, if you're in accumulating stage or decumulating when you're retiring, you choose different kinds of risks and risk tolerances and things. So it's just, honestly, I would say it's really important to just research. Try to figure out, what are you comfortable with? What's a investment that you're okay with? And just start. Put your money in something, start doing something, and then I think once you just take that first step, it will snowball into you doing more things. And that way, once you start, then you'll say, okay, you did the first step. I managed to do this. I'm still alive. I didn't combust or anything. I'm still here. Okay, I'll do a little bit more. I'll try more, and then and just kind of like a set it and forget it. If you want to invest, long term, put it in. Don't worry every day if it goes up a little bit, goes down a little bit. You're going to go nuts. You're buying it and you're saying, this is for my retirement. This is for down the road. So you say, okay, you're in it for the long haul. And that way you don't get discouraged if, you see it go down, go up, and just know, because you've done the research and you have your long-term mindset, that all of this will pay off over time. So that's the thing that you mentioned before, Julia. A lot of people in our generation, social media says, oh, make your million. I make $10,000 after I took this $5 course and now I'm a millionaire, and overnight, or I just took 2 months to do this and I was able to amass all this wealth. Sure, it does happen to a very small, maybe less than 1%, or I don't know, exactly what the percentage of the population is, but I think our parents and the older generations understand that working hard and being consistent over time is how you actually are successful with things. There's old sayings that good things don't come easy. And it's true because anything that's really worthwhile usually takes a long time for you to grow and to nurture and to have the patience to really see it out to get the benefits of it. And I think that applies to real estate, it applies to investing, applies to a lot of different things, saving, having that long-term view, putting aside that $200 for 40 years is going to make a huge difference. You go out and you spend just one dinner, $30, $40, $50. But we don't think about that. But then if we want to put $100 aside every month, we're not prioritizing that. So it's just looking at little things in your life and just saying, okay, setting this $100 or $200, I have to prioritize this because you understand how much of an impact that will make if you consistently put that small amount aside and invest it, but long term. And if you have it invested, it will pay off long term.
I think the biggest theme that what seems to be here, what I'm hearing from you, is you have to change your mindset on money. And whether that's like you said, financial planning, prioritizing, it's easy for us to spend $100 out when you go out. That's the minimum now, I find.
Yeah.
But oh gosh, I should save that $100 is a much different and I would say even difficult conversation with yourself. And to that too, like one of the best advices, it was from my dad, but the best advice is about investing that he said to me. He said, Julia, you can't have personal connection to your money. You have to respect your money, you work hard for it. But if you lose it, like if you're investing, you can't have that personal, oh my God, it's down 10%. Like, for example, I'm invested in Apple right now. It is down. But I know Apple's going to come back up. It's a staple in our economy. There's nowhere you turn that you don't see someone carrying some sort of Apple device. So it's like you have to, like you said, risk tolerance. What is my risk tolerance? You have to respect the money, you work hard for it. But if you lose it, you have to also be okay with that. And I think that's where people struggle with investing. And it's no fault to your own. You did your informed decision. I would say, don't listen to anyone trying to sell you a course to make millions overnight, because that's not realistic. But I think, having those informed decisions and looking at money through a different perspective, that you might lose it, but you might also gain it, right? The amount of times I've heard people, oh shit, I wish I would have invested more in X, Y, and Z stock. But like you said, changing your perception, educating yourself, being empowered with this information, and sitting back and understanding, what do I actually want? And getting out that noise chatter of, I need a Lamborghini, I need the big $1 million house. Well, no, you can start off with like a studio apartment and then build up from there. And I think that's just having those honest conversations with yourself and also surrounding yourself with smart people. I think there was a stat recently that came out where it's like, if you have a lawyer, a banker, and like a doctor in your friend group, you are almost guaranteed success in some capacity in your life. And I thought that was just really interesting. And like, I even just look at us chatting, we met through a friend of a friend, but you're here talking about it because I know this is something you're very passionate about. And again, very appreciative you're here, but it just goes to show knowledge is power, talking to people and opening up. And I think that's where a lot of people get bogged down sometimes, is they don't open up, they don't talk. And I guess also just rambling on here, like you're doing well for yourself, Amelia. You've gone through school. I believe you own your own place too. Is that correct?
I do, yeah. So I own a condo in North York, and I'm also invested in a pre-construction project in Vaughan that should be built this year. So I was able to purchase the pre-construction with a family member. We did 50-50, but then I was able to purchase the condo completely by myself. So
yeah, I think it's being, savvy that way. Like, can I pull investors? And it's not like working with your family, if you're in that fortunate decision, to be like, can you give me this like loan kind of, or gifting that loan? Like, there's so many little loopholes here and there, but I think it's really important. And you're young and you've been able to do that. So it's not like it's impossible. And I think that's that barrier where people are struggling with. I know I struggled with it for a while until I started educating myself. I made a career change and started expanding in these spaces. And I guess as we're wrapping up a little bit here, like what other advice would you say for people who are trying to financial plan and goal set? Like what made your success happen is maybe a better way I should ask you.
So I'm fortunate because my aunt is in the real estate business, and that's how I got into it. And from very early on, she ingrained in my mind, you're going to own properties, you're going to have lots of investments, and you can do it. It's very attainable. So it was something that I always had in the back of my mind, and I worked towards from very young. So right when I started working, I started saving. I started working when I was 16 in a kitchen, and I was doing a lot of different jobs. And with every single job, I was saving a lot of money. And what I encourage, the people around me to do is I try to ask my friends, how much do you have saved? What are your goals? What are you invested in? I know a lot of people have investments with just an advisor and they don't even know what they're invested in, what kind of return they're getting. I ask my friends, how much are you making? Like, how much do you take home? How are you using that money? What do you want in the future? I've seen lots of people getting wealthy investing in the stock market, lots of people getting rich investing in real estate. I am encouraging people to just be more open about what you're making, what kind of goals you have. Be more involved in your own future. Ask more questions. Get more involved and sharing stories. I know a lot of my friends, when I shared how I was able to purchase my condo with them, they said, oh, wow, wait, I have a similar amount saved, and this seems like something that could be attainable for me too. And I actually didn't realize, obviously, depending on kind of financial situation you're in, but they said, that's not that unrealistic. This is actually something that's pretty attainable that I can work towards. And I think them just hearing my story sparked something in their mind, because I was fortunate enough to have someone put that seed in my mind. So I would just say, keep having open conversations and talking to more people. And it's just about what you were saying. When you surround yourself with a lot of really successful people that are going after the big hotshot jobs and the jobs that make a lot of money, and they're investing a lot and they're buying a lot of real estate, and you hear how people get to those points, then it can give you a roadmap of, oh, okay, if they were able to do it that way, I'm in a similar situation, or I can see myself following a path like that, and then I can get to that end goal as well. We're all on the same team here. It's like when you empower others, you're empowering yourself. They say when people are super successful, you're never doing it alone. You're always with other people. So that's kind of what my takeaway would be, is just really take control of your life, take control of what you make. It doesn't matter what situation you're in. You can start investing with any amount of money. You can eventually possibly have a goal of home ownership. All these things, if you make the right plan and you have the right support system and you take the right steps, you can get towards those goals. And then once you hit one, then you set the next one and you keep going, and all of your work will accumulate over time and allow you to, hopefully everyone can become more financially literate, more financially free, and be able to enjoy like all the savings and work that they've done and homes that they live in, or however you want to spend it. And you're able to just enjoy the hard work and savings and investing and the steps that you've taken. So,
yeah. And another thing that comes to mind, all great points, but like diversifying too. And I know this conversation, we started off with real estate, moved into stocks and again, all those fancy words, GICs and whatnot. But diversifying your assets. And I think that comes along with that experience and building up with, I accomplished one goal. Yes, check mark. But now what's the bigger goal? And there's so many great resources out there. I forgot to mention this earlier when you brought it up, but like, for example, RBC has once you open an investing account with them, they actually have like a practice account you can use for 100K, and you can just play around with what the stock market would be, and there's no risk to you. So I think it's like, you got to put yourself out there. And I think that's one thing that I keep hearing you say in so many words is put yourself out there, educate yourself, diversify. It's the only way I think anyone can get ahead. And sometimes it, frustrates you when people complain. And it's like, well, more or less we come with a lot of similar opportunities. It's who's going to run with it, who's going to educate themselves, who's going to hustle, who's going to be ambitious. And I think that's where it comes to, again, having those honest conversations with yourself about, where do I want to be? What do I want to do? If I want to stay at the same job, that's great. That's your path. For me, I could never, but that's just the type of personality I am. And again, like I really appreciate you taking the time and sharing all your advice. Is there any closing thoughts you wanted to share with viewers? And maybe if you want to plug yourself, where they can find you if they want to follow you on social media?
Yeah, so I'm on Instagram as my main social media platform, Amelia the Realtor. And I specialize in pre-construction, resale, buying, selling, renting. So anything that you needed help with, I can assist with all kinds of residential real estate. So you can follow me on those platforms. And if you were thinking you're a young person, you wanted to get into the real estate market, you can DM me, send me an email. All my contact information is on my social media. And I'd be happy to chat and just talk about different ways that you can get yourself and stick your foot into that real estate market. So it's just Amelia the Realtor. You want to pick my brain about anything, we can talk about where the economy is going, when's a good time to buy, sell, rent. So I'm happy to have those conversations again, exactly on the theme of this podcast, is to just keep having these open conversations and dialogue about investing in real estate and just finance and money in general. So,
well, very well said, Amelia, and I appreciate your time. And I do definitely hope my viewers and listeners take you up on that. No excuses. You have a resource now. But this was an awesome talk. Again, wrapping up here with Amelia Dandan as we talk about unlocking wealth and money. And that's everything. I hope you guys tune in next week for my next special guest. But that's everything for tonight. Thank you so much.
Thanks, Julia. That was great.